Um, my name is Ephraim Katsir, and on behalf of Sephardic Heritage International in DC, or SHIN DC, welcome to our Learn to Chant the Torah webinar series, class number 2, with instructor Isaac Treuherz. Here's Isaac.
Hi, Shavua Tov, everyone. We're gonna more or less kick this class off, I'd say, sort of shortly before last week left off, if that makes sense. A little bit of revising where we were, a little bit of catching up, and then moving on. I'm delighted to see both people back from last week and new faces. So if those who weren't here last week are happy to do a short, what is, if any, and if none, that's completely fine, your prior Torah reading knowledge or experience, both in terms of confidence and what nusach. And also, what's your rough Hebrew reading comfort? And a final thing, that currently about half the people in here are off video. And if you are happy being on video, assuming you're like wanting to sort of fully like participate, be called upon, yada, 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 then it'd be great to have video on. Essentially, just once we start like reading and passing things around the room, I'll probably just be calling on people with video on, unless someone without video like peeps a message in the chat saying, oh, I also am here and want to be called upon. That's completely fine. Just make me aware. That's about it. I'll go around my screen calling on people. If I call upon someone who was here last week as if you weren't here last week, I'm so sorry in advance. Wilhelmina, do you want to kick stuff?
Hi. So my previous experience, I have experience with laning according to Ashkenazi tradition, and no real experience with Sephardi. I learned how to read Torah a few years ago, and as time has gone on, my practice has become more and more Sephardi. So I figured this was like a great next step in that adventure.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, and Hebrew reading?
Oh, yeah, I speak Hebrew. Or yeah, Hebrew is good.
Daniel, how about you?
Yes, so my Hebrew reading is pretty good, and I have been typically chanting with the Yerushalmi Nusach, so, but I do have a special spot in my heart for the S&P, so I'm excited to learn it more formally.
Thank you. Betsy, how are you?
Hi, Isaac. I watched the class on Facebook last week. It was really good. I read Sephardi Nusach, but I don't know the terming. Since last week, this is the first time that I've like seen the signs and actually followed. I know the Iraqi tune, and I don't know the Spanish and Portuguese, which is really nice to hear this now. Yeah, and my reading skills, I can read slowly in Hebrew. It's hard for me to understand, so I take it really slowly. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel?
Hi, I can read and understand Hebrew fairly comfortably. I've very limited experience of Torah reading. I've read in a Sephardi style Megillah reading every year for some years. And I'd really like to be able to extend being able to read to the Torah as well.
Thank you. Talia?
Hi, my Hebrew reading is passable, but it could definitely be worse. Could be better. And I don't have any previous experience with chanting the Torah.
Sorry, my bad. I think that's everyone who wasn't here last week. If there's anyone else, give me a wave or just unmute yourself and go ahead. Okay. Amazing. Let's kick off then. So, and one other disclaimer I'm going to say is that in the UK right now, we're in a ridiculous heat wave. It's like mid-30s, which is, I think, like around 90 Fahrenheit for those across the pond. So I'm thinking through putty right now. I just want to put that out there. But I'll do the best. I'll do the best that I can. So I'm going to start off by just going back to where we were last week, where we were singing instead of talking. What I want to do is gradually instill this sense of phrase. I got a message after last week's session, actually, which I love because it pointed out a thing I guess I wasn't so aware of, that this is what I was doing myself. Like, it needed someone outside my brain to tell me this, if that makes sense. But what I want to do is start with the phrase and then teach individual and then have individual is the more common method, particularly which is to teach individual marks and then string them together into a line. Was everything I just said clear? Because I just noticed my internet operating. Now. Okay. I'm aware that when I was saying my internet was dodgy, it cut out. Was before that the actual content, the important stuff? Okay, cool. I'll say again. So what we want to do is teach a phrase and be learning overall phrases and give a sense of phrase and then break that down into individual marks. Whereas particularly in the Ashkenazi world, the more common way to teach is to learn each individual mark and then string them together into a line. And there's someone I was having email conversation with. I won't single out. Hopefully you can hear this and know who you are. That I think is the main thing which was disrupting your sort of what you expected in terms of here's this mark, here's that mark, here's this mark, is we want to first teach the overall phrase. So that's what I'm doing when I give you sentences like this. And to recap from last week, what it's all about is a sense of home that we always finish on this home note. People also asked for intervals after last week. So to spell them out, I'm going the home note. If the home note is 1, then I'm going 1 7 1 7 1 7 6 1 7 7 1 1 7 6 1 7 7 1. If those numbers are just gibberish to you, then ignore them, that's fine. But if you play an instrument, they might be useful. So first of all, someone who was here last week, last week we spoke about what we had for dinner. So this week, shall we go with breakfast? Is someone who was here last week happy telling us just using just these most basic marks that we learned last week, what you had for breakfast, always finishing on the home note? Just wave a hand. Lily?
This morning I had toast for breakfast with Marmite.
Fabulous. Is there somebody who wasn't here last week who wants to have a stab? And
I can go.
Amazing, please do.
I had a fruit smoothie and it was really nice.
Fab. Anyone else who wasn't here? Rachel?
I had muesli and Brazil nuts.
Lovely. Any other people who weren't here last week? Wilhelmina?
I had fruit and a sandwich.
Great. So what I want to do now is slightly, actually, no, okay, so let's start with, before we expand, let's start with reading, because we got cut off while we were reading last week. I'd like to just get to the end of last week's reading sheet, and then I'm going to introduce a few more marks. And what I said at the end of last week very much holds true, that like generally people are learning Kriya for a long, Kriya being reading, for a long time before, as in just like by rote, whole verses and scripts, for a long time before someone puts marks in front of you and tells you, tell me what this mark means, tell me what that mark means. So the fact, like last week, we were absolutely doing great. I'm sure we're going to continue doing great. But also, if you see the mark and like, wow, scary, absolutely don't worry. I'm going to share my, if I'm going to have share screen permission quickly.
All right. Good.
Here we go. You should now be able to see some Hebrew script, and I'm gonna go to our example verse just to recap that we started with last week. So think of these marks always as delineating phrases. We have, and they do this in tiers, as it were. So our most primary divider is the one under oto here, which is called atnach. And this, well, actually, more primary than that, I suppose, is the end of the verse itself. But so the end of the verse and this halfway point in the verse, these are both the home note. So these are both, if you've been going up and down, they're where you go up again to where you finish. And then these marks here, just to check, you can all see my mouse pointing at things. So these two marks here, which you can see make a nice little frame and sort of point the two words at each other. This is where our little fluctuations are. So to read this verse out, B'Tselem Elohim bara oto. Someone asked after last week, so are they exactly the same? Not quite. But the nuance is about, the difference is more about how you get between them. Like, I wouldn't want to say that which one has the different note, if that makes sense. But between them, we go, B'Tselem Elo. We've got that low note. We didn't have that at the start. So we're 7, B'Tselem Elohim. But 7, 7, 1, 7, 7, 1, 7, 6, 1, 7. So they're not exactly the same, but they're a phrase. You can't split up which is which. And sometimes they're read even less demarcated than that. Like if you're, particularly at the moment when we're in a pandemic and the service that's currently happening in Lauderdale Road is supposed to finish like an hour shorter than it normally does. These marks, you barely know they're there. They just lick past them. B'Tselem Elohim bara. This mark, this is just to get to whatever's after it. It is sort of the ultimate conjunctive being a mark that joins the one after it. So we barely know it's there. B'Tselem Elohim bara oto. B'Tselem Elohim bara oto. Next line. Zachar unkeva bara otam. And this is where the Ashkenazim are baffled. That's fine. Wait, we did the same tune for here, bara, as we did bara here, even though they're different marks, but different to what we did in Zachar. And the reason for that is because the individual marks are not what's important. It's the phrase that is. And the marks is just delineating which part of the phrase falls on which word. So Zachar unkeva bara otam. So hopefully that clarifies things for people last week, because I know a few people did find last week confusing. To those who are just here this week, that was significantly less time than we spent on it last week. So if you're still confused, don't worry. Hopefully, as we read more verses, you will pick things up. So I want to jump, if that's okay, to 4. And 4 is where we stopped last week, and 4 is some large phrases. So whereas we did all the bite-sized ones last week, what we haven't yet done is the big phrases. So I'll read the, I'm going to read the first couple, because they're slightly different in structure, just so you start seeing how the phrase fits into different combinations of marks. Zeshmi le'olam. So here we don't have our ma'arich and tahar, or what they're called, these two diagonals. We're straight to the holach. Zeshmi le'olam v'zeh zichri ledor. So together, Zeshmi le'olam v'zeh zichri ledor. And when I know that might be a bit quick, easier to hear the phrase across the sentence. So even if the words are quick for people, it's a phrase you're listening for. Zeshmi le'olam v'zeh zichri ledor. Sorry, ledor, saying ledor instinctively. Ledor. I'll read one more. Veha adam. Draw attention here. We've got 2 marks on a word, exactly the same as 2 marks in 2 different words. Veha adam yada et hava ishto, or yada et hava ishto. Veha adam yada et hava ishto. Does someone want to take 4.3? And I'll say Adonai. We've got a. It's being joined to nothing. So just put the whole first phrase on Adonai is the hint I'm going to give you. Daniel, you've unmuted. Is that you volunteering? And if not, can I volunteer you?
Sure. Adonai Ishmo Chama, Adonai Shemo.
Yeah, spot on. Does someone want to take 4.4? Wilhelmina?
Ulmatem otam, ushmartem la asotam.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So where we just have the where we just have a word sort of joined to nothing, as it were, it takes the whole phrase. Ushmartem la asotam, where we would have had B'Tselem Elohim bara oto. Women, do you want to, having done it right uncertainly the first time, do you want to now like confidently say it again?
Yeah. Ulmatem otam, ushmartem lasot. Ushmartem lasot.
Lasatam is the word. Ushmartem, perhaps easier if you start a little from below. Ushmartem, because you were starting at the 1 and then you weren't sure how to go up and down. So approach it from below. Ushmartem lasatam. Want to do it once more?
Mm-hmm. Ulmatem otam, ushmartem lasotam.
Lasatam. Yeah. Fab, thank you. Does someone want to do 4.5? We're flying through them. Jordan?
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך.
The et Adonai Elohecha was perfect. Ve'ahavta, you read a mark which I have not actually mentioned this week, which was a oversight of mine and is therefore completely on me. So this mark is called Zakev Katon, and if this is the end of a sentence, this is halfway through a sentence, then this is a quarter of way through the sentence. Calling it a quarter mark makes things a little simpler than they are, because then you end up, because we're going to regularly have verses with 5 quarters or 3 quarters or whatever, and that's not how maths works. But regardless, if you think of it as a quarter mark, it's another primary phrase divider, and it is also the home note. So what this should be is Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha. So yes, that is for everyone. Jordan, do you want to do 4.5 once more?
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך.
Perfect. Someone want to take 4.6? Lily?
וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך.
Yeah. The phrases in these two were spot on. I would say about the atnach and the sof pasuk, i.e. the halfway mark and the end mark, don't anticipate, wait till, well actually, so it varies. Some people go up where the mark is, others go up always on the last syllable of the word, even if it's not the emphasis. But definitely don't go up before the mark. So to demonstrate what I'm saying, Aliadecha, or possibly Aliadecha, Beinenecha or Beinenecha. Save it till the very end to go home. Do you want to do that once more?
Okay. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך.
Yeah, that. 4.7. And I will also say that if anyone wants, although I don't want to demonstrate the tune for people, because that's giving the game away, as it were, I'm also happy to read verses out, as in just like speak them for people, if that's helpful. Does anyone want to do 4.7? Marie?
Yemincha Adonai, Nedari Bakoach. Yemincha Adonai, Tirat Oyev.
Yeah, fab. 4.8, yeah, so I can see.
ניצבו כמר נד נוזלים, קראו תהמות בלב ים.
I couldn't actually see who that was. Maybe it was someone with video off, or Jerry. Yes, now I see you. You weren't on my screen for some reason.
ניצבו כמו נד נוזלים, קראו תהמות בלב ים.
The second time around, I worked out what didn't quite sound right. So this is another thing I haven't talked through, where we have what's called a makef, which is the hyphen here. It joins words together as if they are one mark, not one mark, as if they have one mark, as if they are one word. So there's a rule that there was always at least one mark on a word, but a makef is the get at. So we'd want to have nitzavur chemoned, like read chemoned like it's one. Let's say nitzavur chemoned nozalim up home on that nach, and then the second line was perfect. Do you want to do that once more, Jay?
Sure. ניצבו כמו נד נוזלים, קראו תהמות בלב ים.
Yeah, the Kimoned was great. Now make sure you go home on Nozalim. So it's the same as Sof Pasuk. This atnach, this upside down wishbone shape is how I first learned it. It's Kimoned Nozalim. I say once more a lot, and then it turns out that I was lying. If you're happy to do it once more.
ניצבו כמו נד נוזלים, קראו תהמות בלב ים.
All the other words are spot on. You're still going down at the end of nozalim. Can you hear what it is I'm saying? You're going chamoned, nozalim.
Leviam, Leviam. Go up.
Yeah. So like belevyam, at the end you want nozalim. Do you see what I'm saying?
Leviam.
Do you want to try that tune just on nozalim? Nozalim.
Nitzavu kamo ned nozalim.
Nozalim, and just stay up there.
Oh, okay. Kafa'u telmod leviam.
So I feel like I'm like spending a ton of time picking on you. Sorry to ask you to do it so many times. That's great. Let's go on to 4.9, and then actually I reckon we'll do one more. So which of these is my favorite? Let's do 4. Let's do 4. Probably recognize from liturgy. A last person before we broaden our repertoire slightly. Monique, was that a hand? Sure, can you go ahead? You're muted, Monique.
Ki Adonai hu ha-Elohim, ein od milvado.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, so let's pause that there. I'm really, really pleased with how everyone's standing, how we're getting on. I'm gonna just slightly broaden the marks we're using, and I'm gonna do that again through speech. Now, you may have noticed that when we first did this, I was occasionally doing what I did just there, that I was going up a little higher and then down a little lower. And this is another overall phrase. And the other thing about it is that I always do it at the beginning of sentences. Oh, that was naughty. I went home too soon there. So I'll sing it slowly now. We go up, then back to the bass line, and then below, and then home. So you can think of this as like what we've just done, but more extreme. We had our little ba-da, we had a little ba-da-ba-da-ba-bum. Now they're going ba-da-ba-ba-da, ba-da-da-ba-bum. Da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-dum. To sing it to marks, it would be ma pa. No. Sorry, so I never learned originally with names. I learned this funny way of phrases, but I know some people find the names easier. Mehu pa kadma holech zakef katon. Mehu pa kadma holech zakef katon. And then if I can, Ashki names are Mapach, Pashta, Munach, Zakef Katon, Meupach, Kadma, Holech, Zakef Katon. It's very confusing that both Kadma and Pashta are words for marks in both Sephardi and Ashkenazi traditions, but they refer to different marks. Whose idea was that? But anyway, you always use this at the start of sentences, and then you use what we've learnt already. And the reason I'm saying that, actually, no, I'll link it to verses later. For now, let's just stick to English. So I'm gonna do just a few more example sentences, and then I'm gonna ask you guys to do the same. So I'll just keep going so you can begin to internalize it. And I'll put in a few variations because this one varies a bit more. Sometimes we just have whatever I did just there. So we skip the middle one sometimes. So it's up, then straight to the down, and then home. And sometimes, no, I'll leave the other variation till later. So sometimes it's like this, and then down, below, and then home. Or it might just be this, and then down below, and then home. Shall we try mixing it up a little between verses like that and verses like this? Oh, and also you don't always have the low ones. You might just have high and to the middle and then home. High to the middle and then home. So that's mehupach kadma zakef katon. Mapach pashta zakef katon. If the names aren't useful, just ignore them. I think I'm done. You're probably all sick of the sound of my voice. So I'll ask for some of you guys to do it. And I should be thinking of questions in advance. So what did you do over Shabbat? Something you did over Shabbat. Let's go with that. Does someone want to tell me something you did over Shabbat and try and go for a mix of this type of sentence and then afterwards, I don't have enough words, and then afterwards this type of sentence, always the big one and then the little one. Anyone want to jump in first? Lily's looking very surprised. Yes, is that a volunteering? Lily, go ahead.
This Shabbat I went to Bevis Marks and the rabbi has just got married. It's lovely to have a new person in the shul. Is that okay?
That's absolutely lovely. I'm gutted I can't be coming down at the moment. And was also no perfect. Where when we come to marks, that would have been mehupach kadma and then straight to zakef katon. Just making sure you're aware that you didn't do the low one before home, which very often isn't there, but just making sure you're aware of its absence. Does someone else want to go? Mark?
Yesterday I went to the beach for the first time since COVID began. There were a lot of people and they seem still fairly safe.
Amazing. I'm again very glad to hear that people seem safe. Gregory, you're using Zoom's raise hand function, very high tech. Do you want to go for it?
Over Shabbat, we had some friends for social distancing lunch. And then my son beat me in Othello.
In Othello, you've left us in suspense. Give us the end of the sentence.
And then my son beat me in Othello.
Hello. Yeah, there we go. Someone else want to have? Monique, is that a hand?
Yeah.
Go for
it. We came home from my son's swimming class, and then we lit candles and did all the brachot. And finally, we had dinner in my dining room.
Amazing. Anyone else want to have a go? Got quite a few people who've been quiet so far. Rachel?
I stayed home on Shabbat because it was so damn hot.
Amazing. The walk yesterday was a tough one. Anyone else who wants to go now? Please do not be shy. Okay, then shall we move to doing it with some Hebrew? I'm going to share my screen again. And this, oh, I actually don't have it open, so give me one moment. Actually, shall I? Yes, no, let's go to our chart first. I have some messages to me. Mark, I don't quite understand the second installment of your question that you just sent me. Do you want to say it with sound?
Yeah, I think I've just missed something sort of very basic probably at the beginning of our first lesson. But in other words, in terms of the melody versus the marks, Ivan, is it that you're going to be teaching us for just there's this universe of standard melodic phrases that you kind of pluck from your bag as you, depending on your own mood as the chanter, just from day to day, but essentially it's within this universe of specified melodic phrases from the tradition. In other words, we can't just, even if we use the marks perfectly, we couldn't necessarily use a Western pop set of melodies, or, you know what I mean? Like Paul McCartney couldn't do this in his usual way. He would have to hew to this 1,000-year kind of packet of melodic styles. Am I right? And there's a limited number of them?
So I think there's a couple of layers of question. The first one is about the marks themselves and how we sing depending on which mark. So the verses you've been given have been very selective in that they only have a particular set of marks. We're about to read verses with a few more marks in them. And whether we've learned two sort of phrases now. The most basic phrase is this, and this is the second most basic. And which of those two you do will depend on the marks that you see. Now, once we finish these two phrases, which these are sort of the bread and butter, and these are also the ones which actually, if you ask, this probably varies from community to community, but certainly if I ask my rabbi, like, how do you sing, like, Taha, he's like, go away and don't ask silly questions. Like you spend ages, like once you've read lots, you just read Taha. You're just in the mode and you're in the zone, and Taha just goes. Sorry, Taha is just a little flick, and it just goes by, and you don't notice it. And like Shnei Galashim, like that's like mark you notice, and the other marks they just go, because you also have to remember that, like, ideally the person reading has vernacular understanding as well. So these other marks are just how they delineate phrases, and they're like second nature. That's why I'm going for a really phrase-centered approach. But in terms of, there obviously are patterns for which is used when, and I'm going for sort of halfway of, yes, pointing them out, but also aiming that we are internalizing phrases as a whole rather than, yeah. I think it will become clearer in terms of which you're allowed to sing when, in a moment when we look at a sheet which has multiple different phrases depending on different marks. And to answer the other layer of the question, which you maybe didn't intend to ask, so I don't want to dwell on that, but like the history question in terms of, are these like 1,000-year-old, everything that we're singing like likely developed in the past few hundred years in terms of the detail of the notes. And that's the case across the board, because if that wasn't the case, then every tradition would be singing the exact same melody. I think that's quite important to be aware of when reading, because what that means is that what's intrinsic to the markings is the phrasing. And the notes, I used this phrase last week as well, but I think it's an important one. The notes are how we are realizing that. The notes are how we are illustrating this phrasing. The notes are how we're communicating this phrasing as we read, in the same way that I to you now, I'm constantly changing the pitch of my sentences, the pitch of the syllables of my sentences, so you know what's the beginning of the sentence, what's the middle, and when I've finished, and when I come home. It's exactly the same. So the notes are how we're realizing that. They're not intrinsic to the marks. I'm going to briefly, let's go to our chart that we were in last week. So we've had, these are our two, these three, these are all home. These ones we've learned now. These you will go home, and we've also learnt ma'arich taha. The ones we've and holech, ma'arich taha, holech atnach, or sof pasuk. What we've just learnt. So that was a recap. What we've just learnt is a little more variable. It's meupach kadma holech. It's the same mark, but it has a different tune in this context. Holech zakef katon, always leading up to a quarter mark. That's why I said put it at the beginning of your sentences. And then it would be followed by ma'arich taha atnach. Yeah. I wanted to point at this so you, yeah. Okay, no, I think that's all the time I want to spend on the chart. Let's go to sentences. The chart is useful for some people for reference who are already familiar with ta'amim, but if it is not, if that was just a blaze of confusing symbols that you don't know and made it worse, then that's fine. And we're now moving on to something which is a little more of a level playing field, if that makes sense. This will be useful for everyone, hopefully. So here's this week's sheet. Going to start with an example verse. This is our meupach. This is our kadma. Mazi v'zimrat yah. There's no holech. Mazi v'zimrat yah. Vayhalel lishua. Hopefully you recognize the verse. It's in Hallel. It's in Shirat Hayam. So here in the second bit, we have our normal marks that we know how to do. Then again, first half, second half. So now if I read it quickly, again, might be difficult in terms of Hebrew, but so you can get a better sense of the phrase. The reason I want to do it quickly is to hopefully give a sense of what I was just saying, of like, you don't notice them go by. It's just like I say a sentence like this, and then I say a sentence like that. I go up a bit, and then I go down. Lily?
Can you just go through one of the phrases, but like even slower than your slow one?
Sure. Mazi b'zimrat yah vayhi lishua ze eli ve'anvehu Elohei avi va'arom menhu. Let's go to, I'm going to do just 2.1 because it's got a holach. And we need some holachs in our lives. As nivhalu. Draw attention here to what's called I've forgotten the fancy word for it. Reassignment, whatever. Reapportionment. Basically, if a word is short and there's a lot of tune left, kick it over to the next word. So rather than doing that would be okay. This isn't such an egregious example, but I would instinctively read it as nivhalu, like put them together. As nivhalu alufeh. That's the holech that we skipped up here. Alufeh edom. As nivhalu alufeh edom. and then it'll be followed by, like, for example, Elohei Avi va'amam amenhu, which we're familiar with. Does someone want to have a go at 2.2? Betsy?
Et hashira hazot ladonai.
Spot on. Absolutely fantastic.
So stressful.
I wanna. Okay, we're gonna actually jump around a bit here because actually we're doing this a little more piecemeal than I necessarily anticipated. So I'm gonna send people, while I'm just going through, I'm gonna send people to the lines that are the best example of what I think we're currently working on. So does someone want to do 5.2? Wilhelmina?
Adonai Elohim Emet Hu Elohim Chaim Umelech Olam.
First line, absolutely spot on. Second line, this is, you weren't here last week, so absolutely fine that foundation is still nervous, but this is back to what we were doing before. So, Hu Elohim Chaim Umelech Olam, or if you're reading quickly, there might be even sort of mode. Elohim. The thing is that this is a phrase. Hu Elohim Chaim Umelech Olam, and we're just staying in our 171. But the first line, Vadonai Elohim Emet, spot on. Do you want to try 5.2 again?
Yeah. Vadonai Elohim Emet Hu Elohim Chaim Umelech Olam.
Right. Again, first line, great. I think you're just putting too much on, if that makes sense. And also I'm not actually sure where you're moving, but you're finishing in a higher key than where you started. So Olam and Emet need to be the same, but by Olam, you're currently a tone up. So Adonai Elohim Emet, home, and keep this note in your head. And this will be a rule for every mark we learn. You always want to have this bum in your head, so that whatever you're singing, whenever we learn other marks, you can always get home. Where are you going? Let me see if I can work out where you're going down. Yeah, I think you want to approach from below a bit more. So, Vadonai Elohim Emet, Hu Elohim Chaim, Hu Elohim Chaim, Umelech Olam. Do you want to try once more?
Yeah. Vadonai Elohim Emet, Hu Elohim Chaim Umelech Olam.
You finished in the right place. You're I think you're trying to do mechupach on the ma'arif. So Hu Elohim, where's your Hu Elohim? Hu Elohim. I think that's fine, because what I've just done is told you to practice this, and therefore it's completely reasonable for you to then do this. But yeah, it's about which phrase. I feel like I'm picking on you. You can do it once more, or we can move on. It's your call.
Yeah, I want to try it just one more time. Vadonai Elohim Emet, Hu Elohim Chaim Umelech Olam.
Do you want to try just the word Elohim? Hu Elohim.
Hu Elohim.
Yeah, that's what you didn't do. Hu Elohim Chaim. Hu Elohim Chaim.
Hu Elohim Chaim Umelech Olam.
Yeah, with the whole sentence now.
Adonai Elohim Emet, Hu Elohim Chaim Umelech Olam.
Great. That was absolutely spot on. I want to say, as a general rule, I really want this class to be participatory and to be asking you guys to join in with things a lot. If at any point I'm hammering on at you for ages and you want to move on to someone else, just say, and I won't be offended. Because there are obviously other people in the school and things can be nervous. Mikkel, was that a hand? Do you want to take us through, should we say 5.3?
מי כמוך בלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בחודש, נורא תקלות אוסף אלה.
So that had how would I describe that? Was something which, if you were to do while reading, I, as the gabbai, would not correct you for, because all of the phrases were, you beautifully had Michamocha Adonai Michamocha Nedaba Kodesh, which is all one phrase, and you briefly had that as a phrase, but it actually should have been broken in half again, whereas you did it all together. So if I don't want to sing it for you because I want to test your reading once more, but if I tell you that this first line should be the phrase that we've just learnt today with the Meupach, Kadma, and then back home, and then this line is what we learnt last week and did in the first part of today. You want to have another go at reading it with that?
Sure.
Behind you.
Michemocha ba'elim Adonai, Michemocha nadaba chodesh, nora.
You did the same thing again. We want to go home on Adonai. If that, and home, back up to this note.
Michemocha ba'elim Adonai.
I'll sing it for you. And I'm sorry if like testing as it were is me. I just it's useful to get reading practice, but not if it's tricky. Michamocha ba'elim Adonai.
Oh, I see.
That's how it should be spread. Then Michamocha Nedaba Kodesh. Mikamocha, sorry, it's the second one. That was my fault. Do you want to read it once more?
We can go ahead with someone else.
Sure. Sorry, I spent a lot of time on you there. You were doing exactly the right notes. You were just spreading them across the wrong places. So I'll do that verse once more for everyone, and then we'll go to someone else. Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mikamocha nedaba kodesh, noa tehilot nosefela. Mark, is it becoming clearer what I was saying before that? So that phrase is these marks, and then this phrase is these marks, in terms of whether you can pick or choose, or did I misunderstand your question?
I still no, I'm still sort of, maybe it's because I just haven't internalized the marks yet, but it's still unclear which one, why we chose one, or the first sentence being X and the second sentence being Y.
Sure. So I'll think of this out a little more. That's completely fine. So this mark, mekupach, and this mark, kadma, these indicate this bigger phrase. When I say bigger, I sort of mean larger pitch range, as it were. But the one we've learnt second. Meupa, these are the names of the marks I'm singing. Meupa, kadma, zakev karton. So wherever you see this, and then, oh, it's the bigger. Where's it gone? And then if it's got this mark as well, you've got the low bit phrase. Whereas, ma'arich tacha, just a flick and then another flick, holech, adnach, those are other phrases. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Amazing. And Mikkel, if I wasn't making that clear, that's 100% behind where you are mixed up as well. So that is on me. Jerry, do you have a question? Are you volunteering to read? Do you even want to do both?
Volunteering to read.
Amazing. Where should we go next? Let's go with 5.5.
5.5. עד יעבור עמך אדוני, עד יעבור עם זו קנית.
Phrases? No, you write the first time. You write the first time. Do it. Kanita, that was great. Yeah. The only thing I'd say was just the makefs. Treat this as one word. So ad ya'avor amecha Adonai. But the notes were all right. It was just sort of apportionment. You can give it another go or move on as you please.
Can I apply to another one? that we skipped over because it might help
Yeah.
for
So
context for me.
you see, the reason I'm skipping around a bit is because there's a variation in the tune when we have two. And what I'm currently feeling like is that I want to wait till next week before teaching that variation, because it currently feels like we're carrying quite a lot. So that's why I'm being very selective currently. Do you want to do a bit of number one that I read at the beginning?
Vayoma, I'm sorry, I can't see the Nikud. Omer Elohim el Avraham, Sarai ishto techa.
Yeah, that was spot on. Are there more volunteers to read? It's probably going to be repeat phrases, just right. Oh, we're at 9, so maybe just the last 1 or 2 people, and then we'll pick up again a little bit before where we are now next week. Or if people aren't happy running over, that's fine. But I would, things feel slightly in the air, so I wouldn't mind just 1 or 2 more people reading, so everything's really confident. And if you need to run off, then go. Monique, do you want to give us number 1?
Nazi וזמרת יה ויהי לי לישוע זה אלי וענווהו זה אלי וענווהו אלוהי אבי ורוממנהו
The word is just man who tune.
Okay.
Yeah, that was great. Tune, that was great. Does one more person want to read? Gonna go with 5.2. And then we'll finish. Jordan?
Adonai Elohim emet, hu Elohim hayim melech olam.
Great. Marie, was that a hand to read as well there? Right, so Jordan, that was spot on. And then Marie, do you want to take 5.3?
Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha ne'adar ba'kodesh, l'ra tehilot oseh peleh.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I'm going to stop the share. I think there was... we got through more this week than we did last week. I am, again, delighted with how people are reading at the end there, because... like I said at the beginning, immediately reading after you've already done 2 hours is absolutely top. What we've just done in terms of those 2 phrases, that is the bread and butter. There is now a huge number of verses that you can read just with the marks that we've done. There's a few variations, like exceptions, as it were, that I want to clarify next week. Other than that, from this week onwards, it's decorations, basically. And I, wouldn't recommend it, but actually, if you were to read a portion, if you were to be the reader, and from the scroll in a Shabbat morning service, read a portion and skip every mark that we haven't learnt yet, like only do the marks we've done so far, and I was Gabbai, then halachically I would not correct you. Like what we have done so far is the phrases, and everything else is just going to slot in around these. So we're making huge progress. Probably going to spend next week mostly getting comfortable with these phrases, maybe learning 1 or 2 basic individual decoration marks, because I want to have a really, really strong foundation before we get to learning melodies. I'm going to once more put my email in the chat. Thank you for everyone who has come. Please do send me questions either by email or to my Facebook page, which is a co-host on the Facebook event, at any point between now and next week. And Shavuot Tov, and I'll see you in a week's time.
So, quick question.
Yeah?
Shall we practice with sheet number 2 this week, or sheet number 1 and 2, or how?
Ephraim will email out the sheet. I might, maybe this is mean of me, I don't want it to feel like I'm giving you homework, but I might add a few more verses to the sheet, because I feel like you don't have to do, but just if people do want to practice, I just realized in this section that I had too many verses with the variations that we've not done yet, and not enough just basic verses. So I might add a few more really easy basic verses, and then next week we'll tackle the variations, and I'll send that to Ephraim and he'll email it out.
Okay, thank you. Chazak u'baruch.
And you don't have to go over any additional things between next week either. This isn't school. Any other questions? And if not, Shavuot Tov.
Any other questions? So Chazak u'baruch, Isaac, and just thank you everyone for joining us. And we will meet at the same time next Sunday, God willing, 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the US and Canada. And the Zoom info will remain the same. And as Isaac told you, you can send any questions to him at isaac@shindc.org. And thanks again to everyone who has donated. And donations can always be made at the registration page, even after you already register, or you can do so on the class page. The same form will be at the bottom of that page. And today we had our first workshop out of 4 with Hazan Daniel Halfon on Western Sephardi melodies for Kabbalat Shabbat. And that was 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, co-hosted by the United Congregation of Israelites, Shari Shalom in Jamaica. Some of you in that community are here with us. And so we welcome you to share your Sundays with us. Again, 1 to 2, and then 3 to 4 Eastern Daylight Time. And so, God willing, see you.
That's 6 and 8 UK time.
Say that one more time.
That's 6 to 7 and 8 to 9 UK time.
That's right.
I promise it would be to 9, not to 5 past.
All right. So you have the coordinates, and see you next time. God
See
bless.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shavuot Tov, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.